The message arrived during Earth's morning cycle, transmitted across 300 light-years in an instant. Ambassador Daniel Reeves read it twice, his coffee growing cold on the desk beside him. The Galactic Council wanted humanity to appear before them within 48 hours. Not requested, wanted. Amy Rodriguez knocked before entering his office at the embassy complex in Geneva. Her dark eyes scanned his face, and she knew immediately something had shifted. She had worked as Earth's lead xenolinguist for 3 years now, ever since first contact, and she could read Daniel better than most people could read books. "They're summoning us," Daniel said quietly, sliding the translated message across his desk. Amy picked it up and her expression darkened as she read. The language was deliberately insulting. Using forms that suggested humanity was little more than unruly children being called to account. Worse, the Council had used grammatical structures that implied ownership, as if Earth belonged to them rather than existing as an independent world. "This isn't a diplomatic invitation," she said. "No, it's a threat dressed up in bureaucratic language." Ben Walker appeared in the doorway, his security badge still clipped to his jacket from his morning rounds. The former Marine had transitioned to diplomatic protection after the United Nations formed its Interstellar Relations Division, and his instincts were sharper than any sensor array. "I heard we got called to the principal's office," Ben said, leaning against the doorframe. "What did we do this time?" Daniel pulled up a holographic display showing recent council communications. Over the past 6 months, there had been 17 formal complaints about human activity. Too many colony ships, too much military hardware in orbit, too many defensive installations on frontier worlds. The Council seemed to think Earth was preparing for war. "They think we're dangerous," Amy said softly. "We are dangerous," Ben replied. "Every species with a brain should be at least a little dangerous. That's just survival." Daniel stood and walked to the window overlooking Lake Geneva. Spacecraft moved through the upper atmosphere, trails of light against the darkening sky. Humanity had reached for the stars with both hands and grabbed hold tight. In just 3 years, 17 colonies had been established. Trade routes connected Earth to 6 different species. The solar system bristled with industry and innovation. And apparently, that terrified the Galactic Council. "Pack for a week," Daniel said, turning back to his team. "We leave in 6 hours. I want full briefing materials on every council species, their histories, their psychology, everything we know." The journey to Station Unity took 30 hours through hyperspace lanes, guided by automated beacons that predated human civilization by millennia. Daniel spent most of the trip reviewing files, absorbing information until his head ached. Amy worked on translation matrices, preparing for every possible variation of council dialects. Ben ran security protocols and cataloged defensive options, though he suspected none would matter if things went truly wrong. Station Unity emerged from the void like a sculpture of light and impossible geometry. 17 different species had contributed to its construction, each adding their own architectural philosophy. The result was beautiful and utterly alien, a place where humanity's straight lines and right angles felt almost violent in their simplicity. Their shuttle docked in a reception bay that seemed designed for creatures much larger than humans. Everything was oversized, from the corridor heights to the door mechanisms. A deliberate choice, Daniel realized: make the visitors feel small. No one greeted them at the airlock. Instead, automated systems directed them through empty corridors to a waiting area that might charitably be called a room. 4 walls, no windows, basic atmospheric controls, and uncomfortable seating that seemed designed for creatures with different anatomies. They waited there for 4 hours. "This is insulting," Ben said for the 3rd time, packing the small space. "It's calculated," Daniel replied. "They want us uncertain, uncomfortable, feeling like we made a mistake coming here." Amy was studying the walls with her portable scanner. "These materials are old, really old. I think this room predates most of the station. They're putting us in something like a storage closet." Finally, a council representative arrived. The being was tall and thin, with 4 legs and skin that shimmered like oil on water. Its translator box rendered its speech in flat, emotionless tones. "The council will see you now. Follow." They walked through corridors that gradually became more elaborate, more decorated. Other species moved past them in the wider passages, and Daniel noticed how they reacted to seeing humans. Some stopped and stared. Others moved quickly away, giving wide berths. A few made gestures that Amy's cultural database identified as warding signs, meant to protect against evil or danger. The council chamber was enormous. The ceiling soared 50 meters overhead, supported by columns that seemed to grow organically from the floor. 12 platforms ringed a central speaking area, each one elevated so the council members literally looked down on whoever addressed them. Seats in the gallery held hundreds of observers from dozens of species. Daniel, Amy, and Ben were directed to the center of the floor. Lights focused on them while the surrounding chamber remained in shadow, another psychological trick. Make the accused feel exposed and vulnerable. The lead counselor was a being of living crystal, light refracting through its body in geometric patterns. Its name, according to Amy's whispered translation, was Wraith, and it represented the oldest civilization in known space. "Humanity stands accused." Wraith's voice resonated through the chamber like wind chimes in a storm. "You have violated the terms of your probationary membership. You have militarized your space at an alarming rate. You have established colonies without proper authorization. You have constructed weapons platforms in neutral zones." The other counselors added their voices, a chorus of accusation. The Bream representative, amphibian and nervous, spoke of human aggression in trade negotiations. The Pelin counselor, covered in fine feathers, cited reports of human ships in restricted areas. On and on, building a case that humanity was a threat to galactic peace. Daniel listened without interrupting, his face calm. But inside, his mind was racing, analyzing every word, every gesture, every assumption behind the accusations. And slowly, a picture was forming that changed everything. When Wraith finally finished and asked if humanity had anything to say in its defense, Daniel took a long breath. "With respect, Counselor, I believe there's been a fundamental misunderstanding. May I have 24 hours to consult with Earth before we respond?" Wraith's crystalline body pulsed with what might have been satisfaction. "You may have your time. Use it to prepare your compliance. The Council's patience has limits." As they were escorted back to their quarters, Ben leaned close to Daniel and whispered, "Did you notice their eyes?" Daniel nodded. He had noticed. Every single council species had eyes positioned on the sides of their heads, wide-set, scanning, constantly watching for threats from all directions. Prey animal eyes. Not one forward-facing predator in the bunch. Their assigned quarters were sparse but functional, clearly designed for short-term diplomatic visits rather than comfortable stays. Amy immediately started spreading holographic displays across every available surface, pulling data from Earth's xenobiology archives, while Daniel established an encrypted quantum link back home. Ben secured the room, running sweeps for listening devices. He found 7, which was actually fewer than he expected. He left them active but set up a white noise field that would make human conversation unintelligible while still allowing normal room sounds through. No point in being obviously paranoid. "Look at this," Amy said, her fingers dancing through molecular diagrams and evolutionary trees. Every single council species, all of them, herbivores or insectivores that evolved from prey populations. Daniel moved to stand beside her, watching as she overlaid skeletal structures and brain scans. The evidence was undeniable. The Bream had descended from amphibians that hid in underground pools to avoid surface predators. The pollen came from tree-dwelling creatures that survived by flying away from danger. Wraith's crystalline species had evolved in cave systems, their ancestors growing hard shells to discourage things that might want to eat them. They didn't conquer their planets, Amy continued, excitement making her speak faster. They outlasted their predators. Every council species reached sapience by being better at hiding, better at cooperation, better at running away. They survived by not being the strongest thing in their ecosystem. And then they reached the stars and found others just like them, Daniel said quietly, understanding dawning. They built the council as a mutual defense pact, safety in numbers. Exactly. They literally created civilization out of the herd instinct, which means when they look at humanity, they see the thing their ancestors ran from, Ben finished. The quantum link established with a soft chime. Admiral Christine Okonkwo appeared in holographic form, her expression serious. Behind her, Daniel could see the bridge of the EDS Wellington, Earth's newest deep space carrier. Ambassador Reeves, I've been monitoring the situation. We need to talk about what's actually happening out there. Daniel gestured for her to continue. Our long-range sensors have picked up unusual activity, Admiral Okonkwo said, pulling up tactical displays. Council military vessels, what few they have, are moving into defensive positions around their core worlds, not offensive formations, defensive. They're afraid of us, Daniel said. More than that, we've intercepted encrypted communications. The Council is planning a preemptive containment action. They're going to try to quarantine Earth, cut us off from hyperspace access, strand us in our own system. Ben swore quietly. Amy's face had gone pale. When? Daniel asked. Our analysts think within 72 hours. This summons, this whole performance, it's theater. They're buying time to get their forces in position. They never intended to accept any explanation from us. They've already decided we're too dangerous to exist alongside them. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, thinking. The Council saw humanity as predators, and they were right. But they fundamentally misunderstood what that meant. They thought predator equaled mindless aggression, constant threat, inevitable violence. Their entire evolutionary history had programmed them to fear the hunter, to assume the worst. How many ships do we have in range of Station Unity? He asked. Admiral Okonkwo smiled, and it was not a gentle expression. Officially, the 3 escorts that brought you there. Unofficially, I can have 16 destroyers and 2 carriers at your location within 8 hours. We've been running quiet patrol patterns in nearby systems, just routine defensive operations. They'll see that as proving their point about militarization. They're going to see everything we do as proof of what they already believe, Ambassador. That's how fear works. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Daniel looked at Amy and Ben, his team, his friends. 3 humans alone on a station designed by and for prey species, surrounded by beings who had spent millions of years evolving to avoid confrontation. What do we know about actual Council military capability? He asked. Amy pulled up new files. Not much, honestly. They've never really had to fight anyone. Their defense forces are mostly automated systems designed to provide warnings and deterrence. The doctrine is about giving their civilians time to evacuate, not about winning battles. They've built a civilization that runs from problems, Ben observed, which worked great until they met someone who doesn't run. The quantum link flickered, and another face appeared beside Admiral Okonkwo. General Pierre Dubois, head of Earth's Strategic Planning Division. His weathered face showed the stress of the past few hours. Ambassador, the Security Council is divided on how to respond. Some members want to submit to the Council's demands, dismantle our defenses, prove we're not a threat. Others want to dare them to try their quarantine and see what happens. Both options are terrible, Daniel said. Submission means we're at their mercy forever. always one decision away from being cut off or eliminated. Confrontation means we become exactly what they fear. So what's the third option? General Dubois asked. Daniel walked to the window of their quarters. Outside, Station Unity gleamed against the void, a monument to cooperation among species that had never known what it meant to be at the top of the food chain. They had built something remarkable, a true multi-species civilization. But they had built it on a foundation of fear, and fear made terrible decisions. We teach them, Daniel said finally. We show them what being a predator actually means, not the monster from their evolutionary nightmares, the reality. And how do you plan to do that? Admiral Okonkwo asked. By walking back into that council chamber and giving them an education. Amy, I need you to prepare a presentation on human evolutionary history. Not sanitized, not diplomatic. The truth. Ben, coordinate with the Admiral. I want our fleet close but not threatening, visible but not aggressive. You're going to scare them, Amy said quietly. They're already scared. That's the problem. But fear based on imagination is worse than fear based on facts. They need to understand what we actually are, not what they think we are. Ben checked his tactical display. The Council has already started positioning their containment fleet. Whatever you're planning, you better do it fast. Daniel nodded. Request an immediate audience with the Council. Tell them humanity wishes to respond to the charges now, not in 24 hours. Tell them we have information they need to hear. They'll think you're surrendering early, Admiral Okonkwo said. Good, let them think that. Prey species always assume retreat means defeat. The preparations took 6 hours. Amy assembled a historical database that would make most humans uncomfortable, let alone aliens who had never known predation from the hunter's perspective. Ben confirmed the fleet positions and established secure communication protocols. Daniel rehearsed his presentation, knowing he would get one chance to change the Council's perception. As they prepared to return to the Council chamber, Amy looked at Daniel with concern. You know this could go very wrong. If they panic, if they see this as a threat instead of education. Then we'll deal with it, Daniel said. But right now, they're making decisions based on fear and ignorance. That's more dangerous than anything we could say. The summons came sooner than expected. The Council would see them immediately. As they walked through the corridors toward the chamber, Ben noticed something that made his combat instincts flare. Every Council species they passed was moving away from central areas, evacuating to secure zones. They were preparing for the worst. Daniel walked into the Council chamber alone. Amy and Ben remained outside, monitoring from their quarters, ready to act if needed. The chamber was even more crowded than before, with representatives from dozens of species filling the gallery. Word had spread that humanity would respond to the charges, and everyone wanted to witness what they assumed would be submission or defiance. The lights dimmed at Daniel's request, a simple accommodation that caused ripples of confusion through the assembled beings. Wraith's crystalline form pulsed with what Daniel's cultural database identified as suspicion. Ambassador Reeves, the Council is prepared to hear your response to the charges. We expect cooperation and compliance with our containment protocols. Daniel stood in the center of the speaking floor, hands relaxed at his sides. His voice, when he spoke, was calm and clear, not aggressive, not submissive, educational. Counselor Wraith, honored members of the Council, I stand before you today not to defend humanity against your charges, but to offer you something more valuable: understanding. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing images that made several Council members shift uncomfortably. Ancient Earth, before cities, before agriculture, before humans were anything more than one species among thousands. 2 million years ago, my ancestors were prey animals, Daniel began. We lived in trees and on grasslands, and we were hunted by great cats with teeth like daggers. by pack hunters that coordinated their attacks, by creatures that could crush our skulls with a single bite. The images shifted, showing reconstructions of prehistoric predators. Several Bream representatives made distress sounds. The Pellin counselor's feathers ruffled in instinctive alarm. "But we survived," Daniel continued. "Not by being stronger, not by being faster. We survived by thinking. We learned to read tracks in the dust, to understand the behavior of the things that hunted us. We studied our predators so completely that we could predict where they would be, what they would do, how they would hunt." New images appeared, showing early humans working together, coordinating, planning. The first tools, the first weapons, the controlled use of fire. And then something changed. We stopped just avoiding predators. We started hunting them back. A wave of reaction swept through the chamber. This was exactly what they feared, confirmation that humanity was violent, aggressive, dangerous. But Daniel pressed on. "We developed persistence hunting. Do you know what that is? We would chase prey for days, not fast, just steady. We would follow an animal until its body gave out from exhaustion, until it literally couldn't run anymore. No other species on Earth hunted that way. It required planning, endurance, and the ability to think dozens of hours ahead." The holograms showed human hunters tracking across vast distances, the relentless pursuit that had shaped human physiology. The ability to sweat, to regulate temperature, to carry water and food while moving. "Our eyes evolved," Daniel said, gesturing to his own face. "Forward-facing, overlapping fields of vision, depth perception. Predator eyes, built for tracking, for judging distances, for focusing on a single target. Every being in this chamber has eyes positioned to watch for danger from all directions. We have eyes positioned to pursue." He let that sink in for a moment, watching the council members process the information. Vraith's glow had intensified, a sign of stress in his species. "But here's what you need to understand. We didn't just become predators. We became apex predators. Do you know what that means? It means we learned to think about entire ecosystems. We understood that if we killed all of one animal, we would have nothing to hunt next season. We learned balance." The images shifted again, showing ancient human communities living alongside dangerous animals, managing populations, creating sustainable practices. This clearly confused the council. It didn't match their narrative of mindless human violence. "We hunted the mammoth to extinction, yes, and we learned from that mistake. We overfished our oceans and learned to establish quotas. We cut down our forests and learned to replant. Every mistake taught us to think bigger, to plan further ahead, to consider consequences beyond the immediate kill." Daniel paused, and his next words were carefully chosen. "You see our military preparations and you think we're planning to hunt you. You see our expansion and you think we're consuming territory. You see our weapons and you think we're violent. But you're missing what makes us truly apex predators." He gestured, and new holographic data appeared. Real-time tactical information that made several council members gasp. Daniel was showing them Earth's military intelligence network, deliberately revealing capabilities the council hadn't suspected. "We've known about your containment fleet for 8 days. We've tracked every ship movement, decrypted your communications, and modeled every tactical scenario you've planned. We know the position of every council military asset within 50 light years." Vraith stood, crystalline body practically vibrating. "You prove our point. You spy on us, you prepare for war." "We prepare for everything," Daniel interrupted, his voice still calm. "That's what predators do. We assess threats, we plan responses, we stay ready. But notice what we haven't done. We haven't fired on your ships. We haven't sabotaged your containment plans. We haven't struck first even though we saw you preparing to cage us." He let that sink in, watching realization spread through the chamber. Because apex predators don't just react. We choose. We decide when to hunt and when to walk away. We understand that today's enemy might be tomorrow's ally. We've learned that cooperation often serves us better than conflict. The holographic display shifted one final time, showing human history. The wars, yes, but also the peace treaties. The conflicts, but also the alliances. The weapons development alongside medical advances. The capacity for violence paired with the choice of mercy. Earth's history is violent, Daniel said. We won't deny that. We fought each other for thousands of years. We developed terrible weapons and used them. We made mistakes that cost millions of lives. But we learned. We grew. We became sophisticated enough to understand that being capable of violence and choosing violence are different things. A junior counselor from the bream species, one Daniel hadn't heard speak before, raised a trembling appendage. If you knew we planned to contain you, why didn't you strike first? Why warn us that you know? Daniel smiled, and it was not threatening. It was genuine. Because predators don't just kill, we evaluate. We consider options. We choose the best path forward, not the easiest or most violent one. And right now, the best path forward is helping you understand us rather than proving your fears correct. He turned in a slow circle, addressing the entire chamber. You've built something remarkable here. A civilization based on cooperation, on pooled resources, on mutual protection. It's beautiful, but it's also vulnerable because you've never had to think like predators. You don't understand strategic thinking, tactical planning, or how to recognize actual threats versus imagined ones. And you do, Wraith's voice was sharp. Yes, we do. That's our offer, counselor. Not submission, not conflict, partnership. You have knowledge of the galaxy we lack. You have technologies we're only beginning to understand. And we have something you need desperately. What could you possibly offer us? The ability to recognize and respond to real predators before they arrive, Daniel said quietly. Because we're not the only ones out there. The alarm started before Wraith could respond to Daniel's warning. Station Unity's emergency systems activated with sounds and lights that sent every prey species in the chamber into immediate panic. Automated voices in multiple languages announced proximity alerts, unknown vessels, defensive protocols engaging. Daniel's personal communicator vibrated against his wrist. Ben's voice came through crisp and urgent. We've got company. Big company. Unknown fleet just dropped out of hyperspace at the system edge. 30-plus capital ships, military configuration, not broadcasting any identification. The council chamber descended into chaos. Representatives were shouting in dozens of languages, their translator boxes creating a cacophony of fear and confusion. Some species were already bolting for the exits, instinct overriding reason. Others huddled together, seeking the comfort of numbers. Wraith attempted to restore order, his crystalline voice cutting through the noise. Counselors, please, we must remain calm and assess the situation before. The main display screen activated, showing the exterior sensor feed. The unknown fleet was visible now, massive vessels that dwarfed anything in council space. Their design was utilitarian, built for function rather than aesthetics. Weapons ports were clearly visible along their hulls, and they were advancing at a steady pace toward Station Unity. Daniel watched the council's reaction with the detached assessment of someone trained for crisis situations. The defense coordinator, a being named Nira from an insectoid species, was frantically trying to manage automated systems that had never been designed for actual combat. Her multiple limbs moved in uncoordinated panic across control interfaces. Defensive platforms are activating, Nira reported, her voice high with stress. But our protocols are designed for deterrence and warning. We have no offensive capability ready. Our fleet is scattered across 3 sectors, days away from effective response range. Daniel moved quickly to Nira's position. May I see your tactical display? She looked at him with compound eyes that showed every sign of terror, but she stepped aside. The display showed what Daniel's training had already told him to expect. The Council's defenses were impressive for intimidation, meant to make potential threats reconsider. But against an enemy that wasn't intimidated, they were essentially useless. The unknown fleet stopped at what military tacticians would call optimal firing range. A transmission came through, translated by the Council's systems into multiple languages simultaneously. The voice was harsh, mechanical, without emotion. Attention Council territories. You occupy space claimed by the Dominion. You have 48 hours to begin evacuation of all settled systems. Failure to comply will result in forced removal. This is your only warning. The chamber erupted again. Several counselors were openly weeping, their species having never developed psychological defenses against this kind of direct threat. Vraith attempted to compose a response, but his words kept fracturing into harmonic distress patterns. Daniel activated his communicator. Amy, I need you to analyze that transmission. Everything you can pull from voice patterns, language structure, threat assessment. Already on it, she replied. Daniel, this is bad. Their language patterns suggest a hierarchical predator species. They're not negotiating, they're declaring. This is how you tell prey to move before you eat them. Wonderful, Daniel muttered. Then louder to Vraith. Counselor, with respect, you need to let Earth help, right now. Vraith's crystalline form flickered through colors that indicated confusion and desperation. Help? How? You have 3 escort ships. They have an armada. Even your vaunted predator thinking cannot overcome such odds. You'd be surprised what predator thinking can overcome, Daniel said. But first, I need command authority. I need access to your defense grid, your communications, your sensor networks, and I need you to trust me. The other counselors were watching now, their panic momentarily overridden by the sheer audacity of a human asking for complete control during a crisis. The Pelin counselor spoke up, feathers still ruffled with fear. Why should we give you such power? How do we know you won't use this crisis to seize control? Because if we wanted to seize control, we would have done it already, Daniel said bluntly. And because your other option is to debate proper committee formation while an invasion fleet counts down your evacuation deadline. Ben's voice came through the communicator again. Daniel, Admiral Okonkwo is requesting permission to bring the fleet in. She says she can be at Station Unity in 6 hours. Tell her yes, but maintain non-aggressive posture. I want them visible but not threatening. That's going to be hard. Our ships kind of naturally look threatening. Do your best. A massive explosion lit up the exterior displays. The Dominion fleet had fired a demonstration shot, destroying an unmanned Council research station in the outer system. The blast was visible even at this distance, a clear message about what would happen to resistance. Vraith made a sound that the translator rendered as a sigh of defeat. Very well, Ambassador Reeves. You have your authority. May your predator mind find a solution our cooperative thinking cannot. Daniel immediately moved to the central command console, his fingers flying across controls designed for different anatomies. Amy appeared beside him physically now, having sprinted from their quarters. Ben was right behind her, already running security protocols. Nira, I need you to route all sensor data to this station, Daniel said. Ben, coordinate with Earth Fleet. I want them forming up in a defensive screen but keep weapons cold. Amy, open a channel to that Dominion fleet. You're going to talk to them? Vraith asked, surprise evident in his harmonic patterns. Eventually. First I'm going to watch them, study their movements, their formations, their patterns. You see an overwhelming force. I see tactical data. The display showed the Dominion fleet holding position, confident in their superiority. Their formation was designed for maximum intimidation, ships spread in an impressive display of power. It was effective theater for prey species. But Daniel saw something else. He saw gaps in their sensor coverage. He saw ships positioned for show rather than mutual support. He saw a fleet that had never encountered serious resistance and had gotten sloppy because of it. "They're predators," Daniel said quietly, "but they're predators who have been hunting sheep too long. They've forgotten what it's like to face something that fights back." Admiral Okonkwo's fleet began arriving, human destroyers dropping out of hyperspace in precise formations. They were smaller than the Dominion vessels, sleeker, designed for speed and maneuverability rather than brute force. The Council observers watched nervously as human ships took positions around Station Unity. The Dominion fleet noticed immediately. A new transmission arrived, this one directed at the human vessels. "Unknown ships, you have entered a containment zone. Withdraw or be destroyed." Daniel smiled and opened a response channel. "Dominion Fleet, this is Ambassador Daniel Reeves representing Earth and the Galactic Council. Station Unity is under our protection. I suggest you reconsider your ultimatum." The response was immediate and predictable. "You dare threaten the Dominion, your tiny fleet against our armada. Withdraw now or we will demonstrate the price of defiance." "I'm not threatening you," Daniel said calmly. "I'm offering you information. You entered this system thinking you were facing prey species, herbivores who would run at the first sign of a predator. You're not wrong about them, but you missed something important." "And what is that?" "You're not the only predators here anymore." The Dominion Fleet Commander responded with what the translator interpreted as contemptuous laughter. "Predators, you compare yourselves to us. Your species has been in space for 3 cycles. The Dominion has conquered 17 systems. Stand aside or be eliminated with the other prey." Daniel made a gesture and Admiral Okonkwo understood immediately. The human fleet shifted formation, not aggressively, but in a pattern that displayed tactical sophistication. Ships moved in coordinated precision, covering angles, establishing overlapping fields of fire, creating a defensive network that any military analyst would recognize as professional and deadly. "Let me tell you what I see when I look at your fleet," Daniel said, his voice still conversational. "I see 32 capital ships in a spread formation designed to intimidate. Beautiful formation for scaring herbivores. Terrible formation for actual combat. Your flagship is exposed on 3 vectors. Your support vessels are too far apart for mutual defense, and your weapons are charged but not optimally positioned for quick targeting." The tactical display in the council chamber showed what Daniel was describing. The council members, having no military experience, couldn't see it. But Nira, whose species had at least studied defensive theory, made a small sound of recognition. The Dominion formation looked impressive but was fundamentally flawed for real engagement. "You've been conquering prey species for so long, you've forgotten how to fight," Daniel continued. "You rely on fear and overwhelming display. It works great until you meet someone who doesn't scare easily." "Enough talk," the Dominion commander snarled. "You have 1 minute to withdraw or we open fire." "Ben," Daniel said quietly, "what's our boarding team status?" "Locked and loaded. Stealth shuttles deployed 12 minutes ago during the conversation. They're currently attached to the Dominion flagship's lower hull, right in the sensor blind spot you identified." The council members who heard this exchange looked shocked. Wraith's crystalline form pulsed rapidly. "You deployed troops during negotiations. That's standard tactical doctrine," Daniel said. "While they were focused on threats from the front, we moved assets into position from angles they weren't watching. It's called misdirection. Predators use it all the time." The 1-minute deadline passed. The Dominion fleet's weapons powered up to firing status, energy readings spiking across the sensor displays. The council observers pressed back in their seats, some covering their eyes or sensory organs. Then Admiral Okonkwo made her move. The human fleet didn't attack. Instead, they fired targeting lasers, painting every Dominion ship with acquisition locks. Simultaneously, they transmitted detailed tactical data to the Dominion flagship, showing exactly how the engagement would proceed. The data was devastating in its precision. Human battle computers had calculated firing solutions for every enemy vessel. They showed probable damage, casualty estimates, and timeline to mission kill for each ship. The Dominion would win eventually through sheer numbers, but they would lose at least half their fleet doing it. The data even projected which specific Dominion vessels would be destroyed first. "This is what Predator versus Predator looks like," Daniel said. "We don't just threaten, we calculate, we plan. We show you exactly what will happen so you can make an informed decision. You can win this fight, but it will cost you everything you came here with." The Dominion transmission remained silent for almost a full minute. Daniel could imagine the discussion happening on their command deck, commanders reassessing their assumptions about easy prey and quick conquest. "Our boarding teams are ready to breach," Ben reported. "Say the word and we take their flagship." "Hold position," Daniel ordered. "Let them think." The wait stretched into minutes. The council chamber was utterly silent, every being focused on the tactical displays showing human and Dominion fleets in a standoff. Vraith moved closer to Daniel, keeping his voice low. "You would truly fight them. Risk your ships and lives for a council that was preparing to quarantine your species just hours ago." "Of course," Daniel said simply, "because this isn't about what you were planning. It's about what happens if the Dominion succeeds here. They're Predators, Counselor, but they're the wrong kind. They don't maintain ecosystems. They consume them. If they take Council space, they won't stop. They'll keep expanding, keep conquering until they meet something strong enough to stop them. And you are that something. We could be, but we'd rather not have to be. War is expensive and wasteful. Even when you win, you lose resources and lives. Apex predators know that. We'd much rather establish boundaries and mutual respect." A new transmission arrived from the Dominion fleet, but this time from a different source. "This is Shrike, Fleet Commander. I request direct communication with the human leader." Daniel nodded to Amy, who adjusted the communication protocols. The display showed a being that looked remarkably like Earth's great cats, if cats had evolved to walk upright and develop technology. Powerful build, sharp features, predator eyes that matched Daniel's own forward-facing gaze. "Ambassador Reeves," Shrike said, and there was something like respect in the translated voice. "You are not what our scouts reported. They said we would find prey species cowering in fear. Instead, I find someone who thinks like we do." "Your scouts weren't wrong," Daniel replied. "The Council species are prey evolved. They did exactly what your intel suggested they would. You just didn't account for the fact that not everyone in this region thinks the same way." Shrike's expression changed, and the translator struggled to render it. Finally, it settled on intrigued amusement. "You positioned forces during our conversation. You analyzed our formation and found weaknesses. You prepared to strike at our command structure while maintaining defensive posture. These are tactics of sophisticated hunters." "We've been hunting on our planet for 2 million years," Daniel said. "We've had time to get good at it. And yet you don't attack. Even now, with my flagship compromised, you negotiate. Why?" Daniel leaned forward, making sure Shrike could see his face clearly. "Because we learned something the Dominion apparently hasn't. The best hunters know when not to hunt. Killing everything you meet means you eventually run out of things to hunt. Cooperation, on the other hand, means you can hunt together." Shrike was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed tone. "You propose alliance between the Dominion and these prey species." "I propose an understanding. The Council has knowledge of threats beyond this region, technologies you've never encountered, resources you could benefit from. In return, they need protection from species like yourselves, and they need to understand how predators think so they can defend themselves properly." "And where do humans fit in this arrangement?" "We're the bridge," Daniel said. "We understand both perspectives. We can think like predators, but we've learned to cooperate like prey species. We're uniquely positioned to help both sides understand each other." Shrike showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. You're asking me to walk away from easy conquest because you promise future benefits. I'm asking you to think long-term. Your fleet can destroy Council defenses, yes. You can take their territory. But then what? You'll have conquered space full of species that will never trust you, never truly cooperate, always resist. Is that worth more than having allies who can help you face bigger threats? What bigger threats? Daniel pulled up astronomical data that Earth's deep space probes had been collecting. We've detected anomalies beyond explored space, energy signatures that don't match any known technology. Something is out there, Commander Shrike. Something that makes the Dominion and the Council look small. When it arrives, we're all going to need each other. 3 days later, Daniel stood in what had been redesigned as a joint tactical center aboard Station Unity. The space that had served as a diplomatic meeting room now bristled with displays and communication equipment from 3 different civilizations. Human personnel worked alongside Council technicians and Dominion military advisors, creating something that had never existed before. Commander Shrike examined the deep space sensor data with the focused attention of a hunter studying prey tracks. His officers stood nearby, still visibly uncomfortable being surrounded by prey species, but maintaining professional discipline. The Council representatives kept their distance, instincts still screaming danger despite growing intellectual trust. These energy patterns are consistent with quantum tunneling on a massive scale, Amy reported, highlighting sections of the astronomical data. Whatever is generating them is using technology far beyond anything we understand, and they're getting closer. Wraith's crystalline body pulsed with colors Daniel had learned to recognize as thoughtful consideration. How long until they reach explored space? At current velocity and assuming they maintain course, somewhere between 6 and 18 months, Admiral Okonkwo said. She had established temporary quarters on the station, coordinating the integration of 3 separate military doctrines into something cohesive. That's assuming they're even coming here specifically. They might just be passing through. We cannot assume benign intent, Shrike said, his predator mind automatically considering worst-case scenarios. In my experience, anything that moves with purpose through space has a purpose. Agreed, Daniel said, which is why we need to be ready for contact, whether it's hostile or peaceful, and that means finishing what we started here. The formal alliance had been signed the previous day, an unprecedented document that tried to bridge fundamental differences in psychology and culture. The Council provided territorial access, technical knowledge, and resource networks. The Dominion offered military strength and strategic thinking. Humanity provided something both groups needed, the ability to translate between predator and prey perspectives. But the real work was happening in spaces like this, where actual cooperation had to function despite millions of years of evolutionary programming, telling everyone to either run or attack. Nira approached the group, her insectoid body language showing less fear than it had days ago. The first joint patrol is ready for deployment. 3 human destroyers, 2 Dominion cruisers, and Council support vessels. It took 16 hours to establish compatible communication protocols. That's better than the 24 we projected, Ben said, looking up from his security console. Though I'm still not thrilled about having this many different command structures trying to work together. It will improve with practice, Shrike said. My warriors are learning that the Council species can provide strategic value beyond being protected. Their sensor technology is remarkably sophisticated. And your people are learning that overwhelming force isn't always the answer, Wraith added, his harmonic voice carrying less tension than before. Your tactical officers have been teaching our defense coordinators concepts we never considered. The idea that offense can be defensive, that showing strength prevents conflict rather than causing it. Daniel watched the interaction with quiet satisfaction. This was the real victory, not the standoff with the Dominion fleet, but this awkward, uncomfortable cooperation between beings who should have been natural enemies. It was messy and inefficient and sometimes frustrating for everyone involved. It was also working. Ambassador Reeves, incoming transmission from Earth, a human communications officer called out. Priority diplomatic channel. The display showed multiple faces, the United Nations Security Council in emergency session. Daniel recognized the Secretary General, along with representatives from Earth's major governments. Their expressions were serious. Ambassador, we've been reviewing the alliance agreements. There's concern about the level of access you've granted to both Council and Dominion forces. Some members feel we've compromised Earth security. Daniel had been expecting this. With respect, we haven't compromised anything. We've shared specific technologies in exchange for specific capabilities. The Council gets human tactical training and military hardware. The Dominion gets access to Council scientific databases. And Earth gets integration into a network that spans 17 systems and provides early warning about threats we couldn't detect on our own. But we're outnumbered, one of the counselors argued. If this alliance turns against us, then we're exactly where we would have been anyway, Daniel interrupted. Alone and vulnerable. But now we're alone and vulnerable with allies who have a vested interest in our survival. The Council needs us to bridge their relationship with the Dominion. The Dominion needs us to access Council technology and resources. We've made ourselves essential to both sides. Shrike stepped into the transmission's view, his predator face probably not helping calm Earth's concerns. If I may speak, human leaders, I came to this region planning conquest. Your ambassador showed me something more valuable than territory. He showed me the difference between consuming resources and cultivating them. The Dominion is strong, yes, but we were becoming weaker by destroying everything we touched. This alliance makes us stronger than conquest ever could. Vraith added his voice, crystalline harmonics translated into formal diplomatic language. The Council feared humanity because we saw only the capacity for violence, not the wisdom to use it appropriately. Ambassador Reeves demonstrated that predators can choose cooperation over conflict. Earth has given us hope that our civilization can survive contact with species we once thought incompatible with our existence. The Secretary General studied both alien faces, then looked back at Daniel. You've fundamentally altered humanity's position in the galaxy in less than a week. I hope you understand the weight of that responsibility. I do, Daniel said, and I know it's not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, all three species. We're going to have conflicts and misunderstandings. But we're facing something unknown coming toward us from deep space, and we need each other. Alone, any one of us might not survive. Together, we have a chance. The transmission ended with cautious approval from Earth, though Daniel knew the debates would continue for months. That was fine. Democracy was messy and slow, but it produced better results than dictatorial speed. Amy appeared at his shoulder, tablet in hand. I've been analyzing the language patterns from Shrike's people and comparing them to Council diplomatic databases. There are similarities to 3 extinct species the Council encountered centuries ago. All of them were predator-evolved. All of them destroyed themselves in internal conflicts before achieving stable space travel. So the Council's fear wasn't entirely irrational, Daniel said. They'd seen predator species before, and it always ended badly. Which makes what we're doing here even more important. We're proving that predators can evolve beyond simple violence. That cooperation isn't weakness, it's sophisticated strength. Ben joined them, and together they looked out the observation window at the assembled fleet. Human vessels mixed with Dominion warships and Council support craft, a collection of different design philosophies and engineering approaches, all working toward common defense. You know what the amazing thing is, Ben said. 2 weeks ago, we were about to be quarantined by the Council. Now we're coordinating joint military operations with them and a former enemy fleet. That's got to be some kind of record for diplomatic speed. Fear is a powerful motivator, Daniel replied. When that unknown fleet showed up, everyone suddenly had bigger concerns than their prejudices against each other. Do you really think something dangerous is coming? Amy asked. Daniel looked at the deep space sensor data still displayed on nearby screens. The energy signatures were definitely getting stronger, definitely getting closer. Whatever was generating them was massive and using technology that made current understanding look primitive. I think the galaxy is bigger and more dangerous than any of us realized, he said. And I think we just took the first step toward being ready for it. Not as separate species protecting our own interests, but as a coordinated civilization that can face threats together. Shrike approached, having finished coordinating with his fleet commanders. Ambassador, my warriors ask when we will know more about the approaching anomaly. They wish to prepare for battle if battle comes. We're deploying long-range probes with combined Human Council Dominion sensor suites, Daniel said. We should have better data within a month. Until then, we prepare for all possibilities. And if they are hostile, then they'll find something no one has encountered before, Daniel said with a slight smile. An alliance of predator and prey working together. Hunters who learned cooperation from herbivores. Prey species who learned strategic thinking from predators. That's going to confuse the hell out of anyone expecting either pure aggression or pure submission. Vraith joined them at the window, the four beings representing three completely different evolutionary paths all standing together. Do you believe we can survive what is coming, Ambassador? Daniel thought about Earth's history, about every time humanity had faced extinction and found a way forward, about the Council's remarkable ability to build cooperative structures across species, about the Dominion's strength and tactical sophistication. Separately, each civilization had weaknesses. Together, they covered each other's blind spots. I believe we have a better chance together than any of us had alone, he said. And I believe that's what being apex really means. Not standing alone at the top of the food chain, but being smart enough to build something that lifts everyone up. The stars beyond the window held secrets and dangers humanity was only beginning to understand. But for the first time since reaching space, humans weren't facing those mysteries alone. They had allies now, strange and unexpected, formed from fear and necessity and mutual respect. The galaxy was vast and full of unknowns, but at least now they would face it together.